like a shadow. She was Lyra, seen, valued, and alive, and she knew with quiet joy that each week, each visit, each smile from Ethan would continue to remind her. Sometimes, the smallest gestures carry the greatest power. Weeks turned into months, and Lyra felt herself changing in ways she had never imagined. The restaurant was still crowded, noisy, and chaotic, but she no longer moved through it like a shadow. Her forearms carried plates with renewed grace. Her voice was clear and confident, and her smile, once polite but distant, now reached her eyes. She felt alive, and she knew it was because of Ethan. Each time he arrived, she felt a spark inside her chest, a small but persistent warmth that reminded her she mattered. He asked about her day, her thoughts, and sometimes even her dreams. She found herself sharing things she had never spoken aloud: her love for the stars, her secret wish to see the world beyond Zarkon 7, and her fear of being forgotten. He listened with patience, never judging, never interrupting, and every time she felt lighter, freer, and more herself. Lyra noticed the difference it made, not just inside her but around her. Other staff began to respond differently to her energy. She laughed more easily with her coworkers, offered advice when asked, and even took pride in mentoring new waiters and waitresses. Patrons seemed to notice too, drawn to her warmth and subtle kindness. Her work was still hard and the hours long, but she moved through them with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. One busy evening, a young alien family struggled with their order, their small voices mixing with the noise of the restaurant. Lyra approached them with a gentle smile. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'll help you." She guided them, patiently explaining the menu, helping them with utensils and making them laugh when they were confused. When they finally ate, the youngest child looked up at her and said, "Thank you." "You're the best!" Lyra felt tears prick her eyes, but this time they were not tears of shock. They were tears of joy and pride. For the first time she understood that being seen and cared for could ripple outward, touching others in ways she could not even imagine. She was no longer invisible. She mattered not just to Ethan but to herself, and now to the world around her. Ethan watched quietly from his table, smiling at her interactions. He admired her patience, her gentle nature, and her quiet strength. "You're incredible," he said when she returned to serve him. Lyra shook her head with a small laugh. "I'm just doing my job." But inside she felt something powerful stirring, a sense of confidence, of value, of humanity flowing through her. She realized that her life had changed, not because she had done something extraordinary, but because someone had chosen to see her. That simple act had ignited a transformation. One evening, as the city lights reflected on the windows and the restaurant hummed with its usual life, Ethan leaned across the table. "You've grown, Lyra," he said. "Not just in skill, but in spirit. You make this place brighter, and I can see how you've touched others too." Her forearms trembled slightly, but this time with gratitude, not fear. I didn't know I could feel this way," she admitted. "You've shown me something I never expected." He reached out, placing a gentle hand near hers. "Humans often see what others cannot, and when we notice, it changes everything. I think you've realized that too." Lyra nodded, looking around the busy restaurant, watching her coworkers laugh and interact with patrons more easily, seeing small gestures of care and recognition spreading. It was true. Her life had changed because someone chose to notice her, and in turn she had begun to notice herself. For the first time, she allowed herself to dream freely. Not just about the stars or distant worlds, but about a future filled with connection, meaning, and choice. She had discovered something powerful. Humanity was not bound by species. It was in the kindness, empathy, and recognition that people extended to each other, and she had experienced it firsthand. And in that moment, Lyra understood fully that her life had been forever transformed. The sun was setting over Zarkon 7, painting the city in shades of gold and pink that shimmered across the busy streets. Inside Starlight Deli, the restaurant buzzed with life as usual, plates clattering, patrons chatting, servers moving with practiced grace. Yet for Lyra, the world seemed quieter, warmer, and brighter. Tonight, she felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. Ethan arrived at his usual time, his calm presence filling the doorway. Lyra's heart lifted at the sight of him. She moved toward his table with a confidence she had never felt in the past cycles, a genuine smile lighting her face. "You're here again," she said, shaking her head with mock disbelief. "I can't believe you came back." "Already again?" Ethan laughed softly, the sound gentle and comforting. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, and you've made this place something extraordinary. You've made me feel extraordinary too." Lyra's chest tightened, her forearms trembling with emotion. She realized that the weeks and months of repeated visits, of quiet conversations and small gestures, had changed her life completely. No longer was she the timid, invisible waitress who moved through routines like a shadow. She was Lyra, seen, valued, and alive. She looked around the restaurant, seeing the difference her transformation had made. The staff laughed more easily, worked together with harmony, and treated the patrons with warmth that had not been there before. Small acts of kindness and care rippled through the restaurant, touching everyone, just as Ethan's attention had touched her. "Ethan," she said softly, almost whispering, "I never thought anyone would care about me like this. Not really. You've shown me something I didn't know I could feel." He reached across the table, gently touching one of her hands. "No, Lyra, you've shown me something. You reminded me what it means to care, to notice, to connect. That's what makes us human, even across worlds." Her eyes glistened with tears, but these were not tears of shock or confusion. They were tears of joy, of recognition, of gratitude. The warmth that filled her chest was overwhelming, a combination of hope and love, pride and understanding. She had discovered that humanity, the true strength of humans, was not in weapons or technology, but in the simple, powerful ability to see someone else and make them matter. For the first time, she allowed herself to dream freely. She imagined traveling, exploring distant worlds, learning, laughing, and connecting with others. But more importantly, she imagined living a life where her presence mattered, not because of her work, but because she was herself. Ethan smiled at her, seeing the change in her. "You've grown, Lyra," he said gently. "Not just in skill, but in spirit. You've made this place better, and you've made yourself stronger. I'm proud to know you." Her heart swelled, and a smile broke across her face, bright, genuine, full of emotion. "Thank you for noticing me, for coming back, for everything." He shook his head softly. "No, Lyra, thank you. You reminded me what it means to truly care about someone, to recognize them, to lift them up. That's the strongest thing any being can do." In that moment, Lyra understood something profound. Humanity was not limited by species. It was a choice, a power, a force that could cross galaxies and change lives. One human, returning week after week, had transformed her entire existence. And now she was ready to carry that spark forward, to make the world around her brighter, to touch others with the same care, kindness, and attention that had been given to her. As the last light of the sun faded from the city, Lyra stood tall, her forearms steady and her heart full. The restaurant hummed with life, and she felt connected, to Ethan, to the patrons, to the universe itself. She had been invisible once, but no longer. She was seen. She was valued. She was alive. And for the first time, Lyra knew that her life, small as it might seem to some, could shine brighter than any star in the sky. It wasn't a question. It was a shock. Her eyes widened, and her breathing became uneven. She felt herself sway on her legs like gravity had suddenly doubled. One of her co-workers, noticing her distress, stepped closer. "Lyra, are you okay?" She tried to answer, but words stuck in her throat. The world around her spun, plates and orders and chatter blending into a haze of noise. Her mind was flooded with emotion, disbelief, joy, fear, hope, and an unexplainable warmth. The human noticed her trembling and leaned forward slightly, concern in his gaze. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. Lyra's chest heaved as she tried to compose herself. She wanted to explain, to tell him everything she felt, but the words failed. Instead, she stumbled backward toward an empty chair, collapsing onto it with a soft thud. Her forearms flailed slightly as she struggled to regain control, eyes wide and glistening. She was not used to letting her emotions show so openly, especially in front of a human. The human moved closer, gentle and careful, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. "It's okay," he said calmly. "You don't have to be perfect, I just wanted to see you." Lyra blinked at him, feeling a mix of embarrassment and relief. Her chest ached, not from fatigue, but from the intensity of being noticed. Every week he had come back, and she had tried to hide behind professionalism, hiding her feelings. But now there was no hiding. Her heart told her the truth. She cared. She had begun to care deeply about this human who had crossed light years, or at least the effort just to return to her. Tears pricked her eyes. Not from sadness, but from a sudden, overwhelming recognition of something she had never experienced before. Someone truly seeing her. Someone choosing her, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "You came back for me?" He nodded gently, smiling. "I did. I wanted to see you. I like seeing you, Lyra. You make this place better." The words hit her with the force of revelation. Her heart swelled with warmth, and the exhaustion that had weighed on her for cycles began to lift. She realized that the simple act of noticing, of returning, of valuing her presence, was changing her life in ways she had never imagined. And for the first time in her life, Lyra allowed herself to feel truly, fully alive. Lyra sat there, her chest still heaving from the shock. Her forearms rested on the edge of the table, trembling slightly as she tried to process what had just happened. The restaurant around her buzzed with alien chatter, plates clinking and the hiss of cooking machines. But for her, the noise faded into the background. All she could see was him, this human who had returned intentionally just to see her. He smiled gently, his calm eyes meeting hers. "Are you feeling better?" he asked. His voice was soft, patient, and it carried a warmth that seemed to wrap around her like a blanket. I think so," she said, her voice shaking. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. I didn't expect anyone to notice me. Not like this," he nodded. "I do notice you. Every week I come back because I want to. Because you matter." Lyra's mind whirled. Matter? She had spent most of her life feeling invisible, a shadow moving through endless routines and chores. The other alien staff barely acknowledged her. The patrons rarely remembered her face, and her life had become a loop of serving, cleaning, and surviving. But now, someone, a human, had chosen to see her. Truly see her. Her hands trembled as she picked up a small cup of tea, but her hands weren't shaking from nervousness. They were shaking from a strange, overwhelming joy. She felt warmth spread from her chest to every corner of her body, a feeling she had never allowed herself to experience. She realized that the human wasn't just polite or kind. He had a way of noticing the smallest details, remembering them and valuing them. "You really mean that?" she asked softly, her eyes searching his. "I do," he said, smiling. "It's rare to find someone who cares about the little things. You care. You try to make things better for everyone around you. That matters to me." Her mind was spinning, and yet it felt like clarity at the same time. For the first time, she understood something important. Humans, despite being physically fragile and limited compared to most aliens, carried a strength that was different. It was a strength born of empathy, of choice, of the simple act of noticing someone else's presence. Lyra felt her chest tighten again, but this time it was different. It was not fear or shock, it was hope. Hope that maybe life could be more than endless work. Hope that maybe connection could exist even across species. Hope that maybe she could be seen for who she truly was. The human leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice to a gentle whisper. "I come here not just for the food, Lyra. I come here because I want to see you. You make this place alive. You make me feel alive." Her forearms trembled, her eyes glistening with tears she could no longer hold back. She had never felt this before. Never had anyone chosen her just for her, just for the way she moved, the way she smiled, the way she cared. Her life had been a series of repeated tasks, invisible days, and unnoticed efforts, but now it was different. I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice breaking. No one has ever said anything like that to me." He shook his head, still smiling. "You don't need to say anything. Just be yourself. That's enough." And in that moment, Lyra realized something profound. Humanity wasn't about strength, speed, or even intelligence. It was about choice, empathy, and recognition. The simple act of noticing, of returning week after week, of valuing someone else, was something that could change lives. Her heart swelled with a strange, powerful feeling. She had spent cycles feeling small, unimportant, like a shadow in the restaurant. But now she felt seen. She felt alive. She felt human in a way that she had never imagined possible. And for the first time, Lyra allowed herself to believe that her life could change. Not because of grand gestures or great power, but because someone had chosen to care. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing week, Lyra noticed a change within herself. The human Ethan returned as promised, always at the same time, always with the same gentle smile and calm presence. Each visit became a thread weaving through her life, pulling her out of the monotony that had filled her days for cycles. It was not just the shock of his return anymore. It was something deeper, connection. Ethan asked her about her thoughts, her dreams, even her small worries that she had buried under years of routine. He listened patiently, leaning forward with sincere curiosity, never interrupting, never judging. The way he valued her voice made Lyra feel a warmth that went beyond happiness. It was a sense of belonging. One evening, as the restaurant buzzed with its usual chaos, Ethan asked her a question that made her pause. "Do you ever wonder what life could be like outside these walls?" Lyra froze for a moment. The question had never occurred to her before. Life outside the restaurant had always been a vague, distant idea, something she could not touch or imagine fully. But now she realized she had dreamed quietly, secretly, of more than just serving plates and taking orders. She had imagined stars, places she had never seen, and freedom she had never felt. Sometimes, she admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think about it, but it feels impossible." Ethan smiled, gentle and encouraging. "Nothing is impossible, Lyra. I've seen worlds full of danger, beauty, and wonder. But the most extraordinary things I've ever found are the people, and you. You are extraordinary." Her forearms trembled slightly as she refilled his drink, but this time it was not from shock. It was from the thrill of possibility, from the idea that someone, not just anyone, but a human, saw her as extraordinary. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond the endless cycles of the restaurant. Weeks passed, and Lyra found herself smiling more openly, moving through her tasks with a quiet pride. Her interactions with other patrons changed subtly too. She began to notice small things: an alien child struggling to reach a cup, a tired worker who needed a kind word, a regular customer who loved a specific dish. She started taking joy in making small moments brighter, inspired by the simple humanity she had witnessed in Ethan. It was during one of these busy evenings that a fellow waitress noticed the change. "Lyra," she said quietly, "you seem different, happier, more alive." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. She realized it was true. She had spent cycles feeling invisible, but now she carried something inside her, a spark, a fire ignited by the presence of one human who chose to see her, value her, and return. Later, when she walked to Ethan's table with his meal, she felt something she had never felt before: anticipation. Her heart fluttered not from fear but from excitement. He looked up at her and smiled. "There you are," he said warmly. Lyra's lips curved into a genuine smile. "Here I am," she replied. "I've been looking forward to seeing you." The moment was simple yet profound. Two beings from different worlds, species and experiences connecting over something as ordinary as a meal, yet as extraordinary as care and recognition. Lyra realized that this humanity-kindness connection was powerful. It could bridge worlds. It could change lives. It had changed hers. That night, as she cleaned tables and watched Ethan leave, she felt something deep within her chest. It was no longer just hope, it was certainty. Her life had shifted. She was no longer the invisible waitress who moved through routines. The city of Zarkon 7 was alive with lights that glowed like liquid gold, and the streets hummed with the chatter of aliens from dozens of species. Everywhere you looked, creatures of every shape, color, and size moved quickly, carrying bundles, gadgets, or small pets. In the midst of this organized chaos stood a restaurant called Starlight Deli, a place famous for its exotic dishes and polite staff. Tonight it was especially crowded. The air smelled of sizzling spices, sweet desserts, and something faintly metallic that came from the alien ovens. Lyra moved through the restaurant with practiced grace. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, and her forearms moved in perfect coordination as she carried plates filled with steaming dishes. She smiled politely at each patron, taking orders and answering questions, though inside, exhaustion pressed heavily against her chest. She had worked here for over 2 cycles, and while she loved the art of cooking, the endless repetition of orders and the constant pressure to perform had begun to wear her down. Her mind wandered as she refilled a drink for a tall, tentacled alien. She thought about the endless nights, the broken heaters, the small tips that never seemed enough, and the feeling that no one really noticed her. She had learned to disappear into her routine, to move through the motions without letting her true feelings show. That was easier, safer. And then, in the middle of this chaotic evening, she saw him. A human. He walked in casually, shoulders straight, eyes calm, scanning the crowded room as if he had nothing to fear. His hair was dark and neatly kept, and there was a softness in his face, a kind expression that made Lyra's chest tighten unexpectedly. Humans were rare on Zarkon 7, and most of the ones she had seen were loud, clumsy, or rude. But this one, he carried himself differently. There was something about him that felt almost familiar. He approached the counter where she stood, his gaze meeting hers. "Evening," he said, his voice clear and warm. "Could I get the usual?" Lyra froze. Her forearms trembled slightly. She didn't understand at first why her stomach had twisted into knots. Then the memory hit her. A week ago he had come in, looked around at the chaos and ordered the same thing at the same time in the same polite, calm tone. He had left a tip that made her feel noticed. Human gestures, simple and unassuming, had a way of shaking her out of her routine. And now here he was again. So sure, she stammered, trying to steady herself. Her voice felt strange, almost trembling as she took his order. The human didn't seem to notice her hesitation. He smiled gently, and in that smile was a warmth that made her feel visible in a way she had never felt before. As she prepared his meal, carefully arranging the ingredients, her mind raced. She tried to remind herself to stay professional, to keep her distance, to not let a human know anyone affect her like this. But her heart, if she could call it that, betrayed her. It beat fast, full of a strange mix of excitement and fear. She remembered all the little things from his last visit. How he had asked about her day, complimented the presentation of a dish, even laughed softly at her awkward jokes. No one ever did that. No alien, no patron, no colleague had ever looked at her as if she mattered beyond the plates she served. And now he had come back intentionally, it seemed, to see her again. Setting his plate on the tray, she felt a shiver of anticipation. She wanted to run away, to hide, to pretend nothing was happening. But her feet moved forward. She walked to his table, hands steady despite the storm of emotions inside. "Here you go," she said softly, placing the plate in front of him. Her voice carried a tiny note of wonder, almost disbelief. He looked up at her, smiled, and said, "Thanks." "You remembered." Lyra froze once more. Yes, she remembered. Every small detail. Every smile, every word. And as she stepped back, her chest heavy with a strange, warm feeling she didn't fully understand, she realized that tonight would not be like any other night. Something was about to change. Lyra stepped back from the table, her forearms trembling slightly as she tried to steady herself. Her mind raced in confusion. Déjà vu? No. It can't be, can it? The feeling was too strong, too precise. Everything about this human, the way he sat, the gentle tilt of his head, the calm patience in his eyes, was the same as last week. She shook her head, telling herself to focus on her job. She had worked long enough to know that mistakes could ruin a table, upset the patrons, or even get her in trouble with management. But even as she tried to concentrate, her heart refused to listen. The human looked at her with a small, understanding smile. "You remembered," he said softly, as if reading her thoughts. Her mind froze. She did remember. Every small gesture he had made during his last visit, every polite word, every laugh. It was unusual for anyone, let alone a human, to pay attention to such details. She had served hundreds of patrons, but none had ever made her feel seen. And now he had come back, intentionally, she realized, just to see her again. She nodded almost imperceptibly, her voice caught somewhere between fear and disbelief. I remembered," she admitted, her words trembling slightly. The human smile widened. "I like this place," he said, "but it's better when you're here. You make it brighter, bright?" Lyra's chest tightened at the word. No one had ever described her presence that way. Not her colleagues, not the other aliens, not even the customers. She had spent so long feeling invisible, as if she were just another moving shadow in the busy restaurant. But here was someone, a human, who noticed her, appreciated her, and even enjoyed her company. Her hand shook as she refilled his drink, careful not to spill a single drop. Every movement felt heavy, weighted with emotion. She wanted to speak, to ask why he kept returning, to understand why someone could care so much about a small, seemingly insignificant alien waitress. But the words refused to come. Instead, she watched him quietly, studying the small details. The way he carefully examined the menu before ordering. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. The gentle way he pushed his plate closer to himself as if savoring every bite. He was human, yes, but there was something extraordinary about him. Something that made her heart flutter and her mind reel with questions. Finally, he spoke again. "Do you enjoy your work here?" Lyra froze. It was such a simple question, but it carried a weight she hadn't expected. Most patrons never cared about the staff. They ordered, ate, left, but he wanted to know her thoughts, her feelings, her life beyond serving food. Sometimes, she admitted softly, eyes downcast. "It is tiring. Long hours, endless orders, but I try to do my best. I like seeing happy customers," he nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I noticed. You care about what you do, and that matters. More than you know." The words settled into her chest like a warm fire. For the first time in cycles, Lyra felt seen, not for her appearance, not for her efficiency, but for herself. Her personality, her kindness, her effort, it mattered to someone. Her legs threatened to buckle under the weight of the realization, but she held herself up, gripping the tray tightly. She realized something she had never allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could be more than invisible. Maybe she could matter. The human finished his meal slowly, savoring every bite, and then placed a small token on the table, a generous tip, but more importantly, a message in his neat handwriting. "See you next week." Lyra's eyes widened. Her chest tightened again, and a mixture of shock, disbelief, and an unexplainable joy filled her. "Next week? He's coming back for me?" She stood frozen for a moment, watching him leave, the warm light of the doorway casting his silhouette in gold. Her forearms felt heavy, her mind spinning, but a small, bright feeling ignited deep inside her chest. Something had shifted. Something had changed. For the first time, Lyra felt hopeful. The next day, Lyra arrived at Starlight Deli with a strange mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Her mind kept replaying every moment from the human's last visit. "Next week, he's coming back for me." The thought alone sent shivers down her spine. She had served countless customers before, but no one had ever made her feel this way. She felt visible, important even, cared for. As she moved through the busy tables, her mind struggled to focus on orders. Alien patrons chattered loudly, plates clattered, and steam rose from the kitchens. Yet her attention was fixed on the doorway. Every sound, every movement made her heart jump. She kept telling herself to stay calm, but the anticipation felt like electricity coursing through her forearms. And then, she saw him. The human stepped into the restaurant as if he had been there all along, and yet every detail of him was new and familiar at the same time. His shoulders were relaxed, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. That calm, warm smile she had come to recognize spread across his face. Her hands froze on the tray she had been carrying. Her forearms trembled uncontrollably. Her chest tightened. "It's him. Already again?" The thought struck her like a physical blow. Her legs wobbled and she nearly dropped the tray. She felt her stomach twist and turn. The patrons around her seemed to blur as her mind fixated on him. She remembered last week, the week before that, every encounter rushing back like a tidal wave. He had returned every single time, not out of routine but intentionally, to see her. Her voice came out in a small, shaky whisper. "Wait, already again?"